There is a moment that most people have experienced at least once. Usually it happens late at night. The lights are off. The world outside has grown silent. The city, which only hours ago was full of movement and noise, seems to have withdrawn into sleep. And yet something inside remains awake. Your mind. At first, the thoughts are small, almost harmless. A memory from earlier in the day. A fragment of a conversation. A simple question. Did I remember to do that? Then another thought arrives. And another. Soon your mind begins moving in directions you never intended. A mistake from years ago suddenly returns. An argument you wish had gone differently. A problem that might appear tomorrow. And before you realize it, the quiet room around you is no longer quiet. Because inside your head, a conversation has begun. One that refuses to stop. It is in moments like this that many people make a curious discovery. Even when the world rests, the mind does not. But the strange truth is that humans have been noticing this for centuries. Long before psychologists existed, long before neuroscience began studying the brain, there were already observers of the human mind. And they noticed something unusual. Thinking was not as obedient as people believed. In the year 1571, a man named Michel de Montaigne made an unusual decision. He withdrew from public life. At the time, Montaigne was a respected figure in France. He had influence, education, and connections in political circles. But instead of pursuing power, he chose something different. He retired to his estate. There, in a stone tower filled with books, he began an experiment unlike any other. He began observing his own mind. Day after day, Montaigne sat quietly reading, writing, and reflecting. As he did so, he noticed something peculiar. His thoughts did not behave. Even when he tried to focus, they wandered. Even when he tried to remain calm, worries appeared. Even when he attempted silence, ideas emerged without invitation. Montaigne wrote something fascinating about this. My mind runs away like a horse that has escaped its rider. Now consider that image for a moment. A horse running freely across an open field. Fast. Unpredictable. Impossible to fully control. That, Montaigne believed, was the nature of the human mind, and he was not alone in noticing it. Long before Montaigne sat in his quiet tower, others had made similar observations. In distant monasteries across Asia, monks had spent centuries exploring something unusual. They sat in silence, for hours, sometimes for days. Their goal was simple: to observe the mind. At first they believed something straightforward. If they remained still long enough, their thoughts would eventually stop. But the opposite occurred. The more attention they gave to the mind, the more thoughts appeared. Images, memories, worries, ideas from the past, concerns about the future. It was as if the mind had its own current, like a river flowing through the landscape of consciousness. You may stand beside it, you may watch it, but you cannot easily stop its movement. Centuries later, philosophers across the world continued to notice this strange behavior. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and philosopher, wrote about it in his private journals. He noticed how easily the mind drifts, how quickly attention escapes. how thoughts return again and again to the same worries: fear, desire, regret, anticipation. He wrote something remarkably simple: you have power over your mind, not outside events. But even he acknowledged how difficult that power was to maintain, because the mind prefers movement. Stillness requires effort. It wasn't until the 20th century that scientists began studying this phenomenon seriously. Psychologists started asking a simple question: how often does the human mind wander? Researchers created experiments. Participants were asked to focus on simple tasks, sometimes reading, sometimes listening, sometimes simply sitting quietly. Whenever their attention drifted away, they pressed a button. The results surprised researchers. The mind wanders far more often than people realize. In fact, modern studies suggest that people spend nearly half their waking lives thinking about something other than what they are currently doing. Half. Which means that much of the time, the mind is somewhere else, not in the present moment, but traveling through memory, through imagination, through possibility. Neuroscientists eventually discovered something remarkable. There is a network in the brain called the default mode network. It becomes active when we are not focused on a specific task. In other words, when the mind is free. And what does this network do? It generates thoughts, memories, imagined futures, scenarios that have not yet happened. Your brain is quite literally designed to think, even when you try not to. From an evolutionary perspective, this constant thinking once had an advantage. Our ancestors survived by anticipating danger. A wandering mind could imagine threats, plan strategies, recall past mistakes. Thinking ahead meant survival. But in the modern world, this same mechanism can create something else: overthinking, anxiety, restlessness. The brain continues preparing for dangers that may never come. Here lies one of the most curious discoveries about the human mind. Trying to stop thoughts often makes them stronger. Psychologists call this the ironic process. When you try not to think about something, your brain must first check whether you were thinking about it, which means the thought returns. This is why certain worries seem impossible to escape. The more we resist them, the more persistent they become. Today, the human mind faces a challenge unlike anything our ancestors experienced: constant stimulation, phones, notifications, endless information. The brain receives more signals in a single day than previous generations experienced in weeks. This keeps the mind in constant motion, which may explain why so many people feel that their thoughts never stop. And yet, there is a quiet realization hidden inside all of this. The mind may generate thoughts automatically, but we do not have to follow every one of them. Thoughts are like clouds. They appear, they drift, they disappear. The mind continues moving, but we can learn to observe it without becoming lost in its current. For centuries, humans believed that thinking was entirely under their control. But history slowly revealed something different. The mind moves on its own, like wind across the sea, like water in a river. And perhaps the true discovery is not how to stop thinking, but how to live peacefully with a mind that never rests.